And in the storms of our life, sometimes they have a progression like that, don't they? Oh, it's just contrary. Now it's becoming difficult. Now it's crazy. And all I can do is just stay on this thing because I'm powerless against this thing. There is nothing that I can do. The ship had no rudder. It had just oars. They pick up the oars. This is the picture. They pick up the oars and they just let the storm go because there's no point in fighting against it. Now, we pick back up and, get my map back here, okay? Let's go back to the weather map. Now it says, running under the shelter of a small island called Clauda. Now that would be it'd actually be more accurate, like right over here, that they would be on that shelter. It's like 23 miles off the coast, so they don't go under it, they actually go over it. They get a little shelter. And here's what it says. It says, running under that shelter, they were able to get the ship's boat under control. And they hoisted it up using supporting cables undergirding the ship, fearing they might run aground on the shallows of Syrtis. Then they let down the sea anchor and let themselves be driven along this way. The next day, we were being violently tossed by the storm, and they began to jettison the cargo. And on the third day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. Okay. This is what's happening. So the boat that they hoist up, this is like a dinghy boat. It's like one of those life rafts that they tow behind, and they're grabbing that to bring it on there because it might get destroyed if they leave it down there. It says with difficulty, it was probably filled with water. And they hoist it up, and then they get supporting cables and they wrap them around the bottom front of the ship so that it can take a beating, kind of keep everything together. And so they're able to get that under control. And then it says, verse 18, they're being tossed by the storm. They begin to throw their cargo overboard. Why are they on this trip to begin with? To take the cargo from Alexandria to Rome. So the storm's happening. They go, we gotta lose some cargo on this thing. Just start throwing the cargo overboard. Then it says the tackle. That would be like, tables and, anything that they had for like creature comforts. They start throwing those overboard. And here's the thing, the storm changed their values. There's something about the storm that changes your values to what you value most. I don't care about the cargo anymore. I don't care about the tackle anymore. I just want to get home. I just want to get there safely. I just want to make it through. And maybe you're at that place in the storm where you just want to make it through. The cargo's inconsequential. They're no longer focused on turning a profit. They're no longer focused on the money that they would make by getting this ship there. They're just saying, we've got to hold on to our very lives. And there's something about the storm where your values change. You begin to understand what matters most. Just a month ago, we had the ice and snow going on, and I was here. And I didn't really know what was going on out there. And then I got a call from Kathy. She said, "Are you coming home?" I said, "Why? What's going on?" And it's raining ice. I don't drive well in that kind of stuff. And she had wanted me to stop by the store earlier in the day. She said, "Can you stop by the store?" But now we're on the phone. She says, "Are you coming home? Because it's been going for a while." I said, yeah. I'll stop home. And she goes, "No, don't worry about stopping at the store. Just get home. Just get home." Just get home. And maybe that's you today. You're in that storm and you just want to know that you're going to get home. Oh, maybe not to your physical home here, but to home where God is. Hey, it's a mess. Hey, it's bumpy. Hey, it's squiggly. I just want to get to you, Jesus. There's something about the storm that changes your values. I love the words to the song. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. You want to know how you're going to get home? Grace. Grace, grace, God's grace, grace that is greater than all of my sin. Verse 20, since neither sun nor stars appears for many days, no small storm was assailing us. From then on, all hope of being saved was slowly being abandoned. They begin to believe that they're not going to be saved. There's no way out of this. For navigation, they would use the sun and the stars, so they had no idea where they even were. Maybe you're in that place. I have no idea where I am, and I'm losing hope. My hope's abandoned. The forecast was not changing. Things were not clearing up, but Paul speaks up as they're getting ready to give up. Paul's going to speak up. He's going to first give a little personal note, which is kind of comical. But then he's going to give the words of the Lord. And in the storm, we need the words of the Lord. Let's look at Paul's words first. Here's what he says. You love people like this in the storm. I know you do. 21. It says, when many had lost their appetites, Paul then stood among them and said, men, you should have followed my advice and not have set sail from Crete, and thereby spared yourselves this damage and loss. Don't you love that voice in the storm? You should have listened to me. Thanks a lot, Paul. Okay, moving on. But he goes from that word to the word that he received from God. And that's the word that we need to listen to. The words that we receive from the Lord in the storm. Here it is, verse 22. Now I urge you to keep up your courage. For there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. For this very night, an angel of God, whom I belong, whom I also serve, came to me saying, do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand before Caesar. And behold, God has graciously granted you all those who are sailing with you. Therefore, keep up your courage, men, for I believe God that it will turn out exactly as I have been told, but we must run aground on a certain island. He's saying, hey, the ship's not going to be spared. There's going to be damage. There's going to be collateral damage in this storm. But what he says is you're going to make it through. And if you are in Christ and the storm has come upon you, there may be damage. You may run aground, but you're going to make it through. Why? Because Jesus Christ is going to get you through. He is our strong God. He says, keep up your courage. What does that mean? We've looked at that. Take courage, keep up your courage. It means be of good cheer, be cheerful, cheer up, have joy. Why? You're going to make it. Hey, guess what? If nothing else works out in this life and you're in Christ, cheer up. You're going to make it. And sometimes I think about that. Man, I'm having a rough day. I'm like, guess what? I'm going to heaven. If that's all I got on a day, that's a pretty good day. That's a pretty amazing day. That I have the promises of God. And what he says to the people is, I trust God that it will turn out exactly the way he said it would turn out. Do you trust God that it's going to turn out exactly the way that he said it would? Again, we go from glory to glory, but we don't know the ups and downs on the journey. But we trust him with our destination. Your method may have changed. Your mission remains, Paul. He says, you're going to Rome. You're going to Rome, Paul. He says, you're headed to Rome. You're not going to die. You're headed to Rome. Paul, you're not going to die in this storm. You're going to Rome. I already told you that you're going to Rome. He goes, I believe God. I trust God. If you've put your faith and trust in Jesus, yet you find yourself in one of life's storms today, I want to encourage you to cheer up, to be joyful, because this storm is not the end. Your present storm, maybe it's one of the big ones. Maybe you even have a name on it. It's one of those big storms that if you just say, this is the storm I'm going to, we all would go, oh. Well, let me remind you of just who you belong to, because you may have a named storm, but the God you serve has the name above all names. And there's no storm that can conquer him. Blessed is the person whose strength is in you. That blessed, happy. Psalm 28, 7-8, the Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in him and I am helped. Therefore my heart triumphs, and with my song I thank him. The Lord is their strength. He is a refuge of salvation for his anointed. Focus on him, not the forecast. You remember Peter. Peter's in the boat. The disciples are in the boat. Jesus says, meet me on the other side. They go into the boat. It's one of our favorite stories. Peter gets into the boat and Jesus is coming on the water and he says, Lord, since it's you, ask me to come. And he says, come, Peter. And Peter gets out of the boat. And what does he begin to do? He begins walking on water. Why? Because his eyes were fixed on Christ. But then it says he saw the wind. And when he saw the wind, he began to sink. Are you looking at the wind or are you looking at the one who can get you through the wind? Are you fixing your eyes on the forecast or the Father? Are you fixing your eyes on the conditions or Christ? Because only one can give you strength in the storm. The forecast is going to cause us all to falter. But the Father will give us strength. He tells them to take courage. And what they end up doing, the storm rages on, and they start worrying that they're going to hit rocks. So they begin sounding out how deep it is. They would put a weight on a rope, they'd throw it overboard, see how deep it is. It says it was 20 fathoms and then 15 fathoms. A fathom is 6 feet. And so, it's getting more and more shallow. It says they then begin to pray for daybreak, but while they're praying, they take that boat that they brought up into the ship and they put it over to the other side, and there's some folks on the boat that are getting ready to jump. Paul goes to the captain, he says, if they jump in that thing, they're going to die. If they jump in that thing, they're going to die. Why? Because the Lord told Paul, those who are with you, I will grant to save their lives. Now you're going to leave Paul? I mean, he's the one who just called it all out. This leads me to the last point. Don't jump ship when God is in it. When God is in something, don't jump ship from that something. Stay in it. It may be the most severe, toughest storm that you've ever faced in your life. Don't jump ship if God is in it. Now, there's times where we need to jump ship because God's not in it. You remember Jonah? There's a storm that came because he was going in the opposite direction of God's will. But when God is in it and his word confirms that, and you have wise counsel in your life, and you know that, man, this is just really, really tough. Don't jump ship. God is in it. And perhaps you need to hear this morning regarding a situation that you're in, a circumstance that you're in. Stay in it. If God is in it, stay in it. If God is in it, don't jump ship. You can choose Christ despite the change. You can focus on him and not the forecast. And even when the winds get heavy, if he is in it, then he will be faithful in it. Stay faithful to him. He'll be faithful to you. As the story goes, the ship ends up striking a reef and breaking apart. Some swam to the shore and some just grabbed onto fragments from the ship in order to float there because they couldn't swim. But guess what? They all made it to the shore, all 276 of them. Maybe the ship you've been in has already run aground and it's breaking and you're just clamoring for pieces. Trust that God will get you to the place that he said he would get you to. Why? Because he is your strength in the Lord, in the storm. The Lord is your strength in the storm. Paul had 3 anchors in that storm. The anchors on the boat, they weren't working real well. But Paul had 3 anchors. Here's what he says. The angel came to him, the angel of God, and he says, it's God that I belong to. It's God that I serve. And it's God that is also with me. It's God that I belong to. If you're in the storm right now, who do you belong to? You belong to God. If you belong to God, then he's got you. If it's God who you serve, then don't jump ship, stay in it, because it's according to his will, not my will. It's thy will, not my will. I serve you, God. Just let me know what you need me to do. And last, if you're in the storm, you've got to know that he's with you. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. He will be in you. He will be with you, in you. He will come upon you. And maybe you need that. You need the power of him in your life right now. Come close to God and he will come close to you. Lastly, Isaiah 40:31. Those who wait for the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not become weary. You want to know the thing about that kind of strength? You want to know the thing about that new strength? It's new strength. That means it's strength you never had before. But when you wait on the Lord, when you trust the Lord, he gives you new strength. And maybe that's you. You're at that place in the storm. You're just trying to make it to shore. Wait on the Lord. He will give new strength. Do you need new strength? I only know one who can give it. And Paul, as people are giving up, as people are throwing in the towel, he says, let's stand on what God said. Let's stand on what the Lord has spoken.